What's up, everybody? I'm back with the post-game recap for Seattle's 21-13 loss to the Niners. Niners can't speak. Niners clinched the NFC West with their win in Seattle. I was hoping the Seahawks would maybe play a little tougher, stand strong on home field. I kind of felt win tonight kind of would clinch a playoff berth for Seattle, just with the way the schedules were for the other teams. Felt pretty good. If Seattle won tonight, they'd be a playoff team. Right now, I don't know. I'm not even going to look at playoff pictures. It's all about what this team needs to do in the future, what they need to do with the immense array of draft picks that they are going to have, and the not only amount of draft picks, but the high draft capital they're going to have next year. And that's going to be the key for this team to get back to competing with the Niners. I mean, really competing. I know the final score ends up being close, but at no point during that game did the Seahawks look like a better football team than the Niners. They looked like a lesser football team that showed some moxie and hung in there and played hard on their home field, but they did not look like a better football team during any point of that game. There was times during 2013 and 2014 when teams would play Seattle, and they would hang in there. But I always say, at no point did those teams look better than Seattle. Seattle was just dominant. Their defense was too good, and the offense could run the football and didn't turn it over. Very similar to how the Niners are built now. It's kind of a weird game because in a lot of ways it felt less competitive than the score, but there were also ways that Seattle may have had a chance to win that game. Two plays in particular that happened essentially back-to-back plays. The Quandre Diggs dropped interception when it was 7-3, which would have put the ball in midfield at the end of the first half, and then they end up, forcing the punt on that drive, and then Travis Homer fumbles on what would have been a first down about their own 45-yard line with a minute to go, leads directly to a Niners touchdown. Take away the Diggs interception, just the Homer fumble, if that doesn't happen, it's worst case 7-3 at halftime. And maybe this game is 14-6, 14-9, and Seattle has a chance 17-10, whatever late. Now, listen, the Niners force that fumble. It's part of what makes them a great defense. But, if you go back and look at my video where I said, can Seattle win this game? One of the things I said is they can't turn the football over. This is a team that's turned the football over in every game this year. And I said they might have to force a turnover, and they can't turn it over. And I mentioned some other things, but look right away, those two things. Diggs drops the interception, Homer fumbles. Boom, right there. That's a swing right there that if Diggs just catches that ball and Homer holds on to it, now it was a great hit. I think Greenlaw forced the fumble. It was a great hit. But if those things happen, then, it's, excuse me, tired late night. But, lost my train of thought there. I was talking about, then it kind of falls in line with what they needed to do to win the football game. The other thing I talked about was the run defense just had to be bad, and they kind of were. They weren't historically awful tonight. And that's the thing, I don't really have anybody I'll get into the blame, but, the defense was okay. They weren't good, but I said just kind of be bad, and they kind of were. They were okay, and considering they didn't have Al Woods in there today, and then they lose Brian Monet on, the first or second play, they're two of their three best run defenders are out of this game. And they held their own. I think they did better than expected for what their run defense and defensive lineup was after not having Al Woods and losing Brian Monet. Their D tackles were Miles Adams, LJ Collier, Quentin Jefferson. That's not a good run defending defense. You do have Shelby Harris in there, and Poona Ford can do it, but excuse me, I'm sure you guys are loving watching me on, but so they had some guys in there, but not good enough. And with that lineup, they did about as well as you can. And then we get into what the real issue is with this team. That Al Woods and Brian Monet are that important to the defense. Again, I said in my last couple of videos ago, we all love Big Al Woods. He's one of our favorites. But he shouldn't be the guy that's like the difference maker. Nor should Brian Monet. They're role players. They're guys that come in on they're who did Seattle have in 2013, 2014? I mean, Mebane was a little bit better because he could have some pass rushing skills too, but Alan Branch was a guy that was a run-stuffing D tackle that was on this team. I think he was only there for 2011 and 2012. But he was off the field on downs. He was a nice rotational guy. If he was out, they were okay. Now we're at the point where like an Alan Branch type misses the game, and this defense has no way to compete with some of these teams. And that's where we get into what the main focus needs to be on, and that's the draft picks for this team. It really does. Is there an outside shot they still make the playoffs? Yeah, I actually think 9-8 can get you in, and I think they could win the last 2 games at home. But what matters, and one thing I'll quote, Hawk Blogger always says this, Brian Nemhauser, is that like the focus needs to be Super Bowls. Now, I don't agree with them on everything they say, but like he's right. Like what's it going to take to get this team back to the top, to get to competing with the 49ers and the Eagles and the Cowboys? Because right now they're just not there. They may squeak into the playoffs, they may not. And truth be told, and you guys know me, I'm an optimistic fan, they're going to go get boat raced by San Francisco in the first round, even if they do get in, or Dallas, or Philly, or Minnesota's, I'm not as big on Minnesota, but they'd probably get beat up by Minnesota too. So what's it going to take for this team to get to a point where they're the bullies that they were in 2013, 2014? Because right now the talent isn't there. It's going to have to come through that draft capital. We saw today they probably need help on the interior offensive line as well. Austin Blythe is not very good. I'm not convinced Damian Lewis is a guy that's anything more than an okay player. The right guard position, the interior line needs work. The tackles struggled today. And that's fine. Like, they're going to grow. They're both rookies, and I think they're hitting a little bit of a wall. We're into 14th game, 15th game. These guys haven't played that before. They've played 12, 13 games in college, and now they're being asked to go 17, and they struggled against, surprise, a great pass rush led by Nick Bosa. And guess what? Where was Nick Bosa drafted? The number 2 overall pick. It took the Niners some years of losing to build up that draft capital to get elite talent. That doesn't mean that every top 5 pick is elite. There's plenty of bust. Rick Myers, a good example in Seattle. But, to get those Aaron Donalds, those Nick Bosas, those guys are usually not taken in the 2nd and 3rd round, or even at 27 or 28. They're taken top 5. The great news for the Seattle Seahawks, and I've kind of been all over the place in this video. I had a couple drinks, so maybe I'm a little wonky here, but so I apologize if I'm all over the place here. But what's the great news for Seattle? They're probably going to have a top 5 draft pick. So, and they've got a team that is competitive. Like, that's good. This is a competitive football team that's going to be picking top 5. That's okay. And then they're probably going to be picking top 17 or 18. And then they're going to be picking top 40 and top 45. So not only are you going to have a chance to maybe grab some really elite talent in 2 picks, you could trade down and get some really good talent at the end of the first round, and you're going to have some really good solid players to get at the top of the second round as well. And that's what this team has to do to get back to that position, because they're just not there right now. They're just not good enough. There's no single player that's necessarily the problem here. We'll talk a little about the offense. And listen, the Niners defense is fantastic. I think Seattle's offense did just as good as anybody's done against them. The interior of the offensive line needs work. And Geno he was okay. Like, I kind of feel like that's what I've been saying about Geno the last few weeks. I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying no blame goes on Geno here. It's all on the line. And I would put most of it on the line. I'm not here to blame Geno, but there were a couple plays where he has got to get rid of the ball. That intentional grounding could have been avoided. And at that point, you had great field position. If you score that touchdown on that drive, there's 8 minutes left. You have a little more time to get that football back. He had a pick 6 that was wiped out by a really, really terrible roughing the passer call on Nick Bosa that should not have been roughing the passer. That was a bad throw. Now, it was made because he didn't have time, but it was still a back-breaking play that would have lost them the game. He had a sack when they were on about, it was 21-6. It was 3rd and 4. I think it was the end of the 3rd quarter, maybe really early 4th quarter. Now, they ended up getting a great punt on that play, but it was on about maybe the 36, 35-yard line. Takes a loss of 10. You can't do that there. Now, I don't know if you kick a field goal there, but 4th and 4, you're going for it. And again, maybe you score that touchdown with more time left. So, Geno wasn't great either. Now, I'll be honest, I don't think you draft a quarterback early, because here's the thing. I don't think and Bryce Young's going to probably go to Houston. CJ Stroud is not going to give you anything more than Geno Smith did. And you're still going to be left with the same roster, knocking things over here, on throughout the team. And are you going to get better quarterback play? I mean, maybe there's a chance Stroud is better than Geno Smith. I'm certainly not saying he won't be. But, if one of the quarterbacks falls to like late first round and you're still there, then maybe you think about it. But early on, this team needs defensive talent. And listen, I think you franchise Geno or bring him back on I don't know what that was there that I just did, but bring him back on a 1-2 year deal. And then you build up the defense a little bit more through these draft picks. And then if you determine it's not going to work out, then maybe you move on for 2024 or 2025 or 2024. But yeah, just kind of microcosms there, like taking the bad sack that you can't take, and that's on the line. And it's kind of everything. Like Geno can't take the sack there. The interior line and the tackles were not great. They then punted away. They pinned the Niners. I mean, not just the 1 yard line. That ball was lined up at the goal line. And the Niners get a first down and get out of that. You know what I mean? Like, actually, I think that was the next possession. I'm losing track there. But, again, like, do they get the stop on that drive? Yeah. But you need to get that stop with them back at their goal line there. You need to force a 3 and out there. And if you can force them to punt from there, you're probably starting on their 40, 35 yard line in great position to already score. So, was the defense okay? They were better than they've been. But, again, like they can't get that stop on the goal line. And at the end of the game, they gave up 2 first downs. They still couldn't get the ball back for this offense. We saw it against Tampa Bay. They got the ball back about 3.5 minutes to go, and the defense can't get the football back, not even once, to give them at least a Hail Mary opportunity. And that's not to put it all on the defense. They had some injuries, and again, I thought they played gutsy enough. But the Niners are missing people. What if this team had Deebo Samuel or even Jimmy Garoppolo? I'll be honest, I thought Brock Purdy was okay. He managed the game fine. I didn't see anything from him that was Patrick Mahomes level, which we're going to see next week against Seattle, where you go like, oh my gosh, Purdy. They had that great play design on the first touchdown to Kittle, but that was more of a play design than it was Purdy. And I'm not trying to knock Brock Purdy here, but there was nothing he did in my mind that you forced him. It was very much like Sam Darnold last week. It was very much like Tom Brady 3 weeks ago, or even John Wolford, 2 weeks ago. They didn't put these quarterbacks in any sort of pressure to make tough throws. Purdy made a couple bad throws in the first half where they almost picked the one. And he was fine. Like, he didn't do anything wrong necessarily. But, this Niners team fully healthy probably wins this game by a little bit more. Imagine what Deebo Samuel would have done out there to the Seahawks defense. So while the Seahawks can say, yeah, we're missing Monet and Woods, the Niners were missing guys as well. So, overall, kind of a boring football game. I think if you're a non-Niners fan, this was not a very enjoyable Thursday night game. I mean, it didn't even have the crazy Seahawks stuff. The Seahawks always seem to have some sort of crazy stuff they do in a game. It almost did at the end when they scored to make it 21-13. But, still nothing really, just kind of a game that felt like the Niners were in control. And at no point did Seattle really, really feel like they were... I shouldn't say they didn't feel like they were in the game. They were in the game at moments. I think what it is for me is at no point watching that game did I ever come away thinking Seattle was better than the 49ers. They looked like a worse team from outside the opening kickoff when Igwebuike, who, by the way, great kick return. Seattle needs to get him on the active roster here, and see what he can do at the end of the year, and maybe he can be a guy next year for you. But at no point watching the game, excuse me, it's late at night, I apologize for the yawning, but did I look at that game and think, man, Seattle's better here than the Niners? And that's okay. That's okay. In years past, it hasn't been okay because this team hasn't had draft capital. It's been traded away for players that the Sheldon Richardsons, the Jamal Adamses, the Jimmy Grahams, that's gone. We have the draft picks now. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel here. This isn't, again, I said it last week, this wasn't the year. And we got caught up in it 6-3, and it stings. It sucks that they lost. I'm not going to come on here and tell you it shouldn't hurt. It does. Like, it's still a season. It's still a football season. that looked like they were going to make the playoffs, and now looks like they're very decent chance they don't get in here. So that absolutely stings, but the stinger comes out a little smoother when you look at the draft capital this team has. Now, they still have to nail those draft picks. That's not guaranteeing anything, but if you do end up at 2, excuse me, and you can get a Jalen Carter, I kind of made a point on Twitter, and a little tongue-in-cheek, but, that 3 and out when they could have had it at the Niners' 1-yard line and they couldn't make the stop, I said, next year with Jalen Carter in there, that won't happen. We'll get the stop. Now, Seahawks might not end up with Jalen Carter, obviously. Denver could win a couple games here, and they could kind of be forced out of that, or Will Anderson, whoever you want Seattle to get. But my point is, this team needs talent. It needs a talent infusion. That D-line is just, it's not good. Quentin Jefferson probably played 45 snaps tonight. LJ Collier and Miles Adams probably played 30 snaps each. Those are guys that, should normally be playing. Jefferson's a guy you want to have 10 to 15 snaps. Collier's a guy that's probably not on an NFL roster next year. And I actually thought Miles Adams played okay. He actually did some things, but he's a guy that's active and gets 5 to 7 snaps. They're not guys that are your pillars on the D-line. Even like I said, even Shelby Harris and Al Woods are more role players than they are, key points of your D-line. Those are guys that should be playing 15 to 20 snaps a game. So you need an investment on the D-line. I think there's other areas too. I think the offense interior line, it's the trenches. It really is. This team has got to get better in the trenches. They started it last offseason with Lucas and Cross, and that was a great start. I think they need some work on the interior offensive line as well. And the D-line on the interior, I think, Nwosu is a guy you want to bring back. He's obviously got pass rush ability, and he's been good, but that interior line needs some guys that aren't just run stuffers and aren't just situational pass rushers. They need guys that can do both. Look at the Niners. Eric Armstead, was Armstead a first-round pick? It's going to drive me nuts now. I can't look that up. I think he was. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. He was definitely a high draft pick. And Nick Bosa, second overall pick. High talent wins football games. The Niners have it. The Seahawks don't right now. That doesn't mean the Seahawks are without talent. They're just not there yet. The Niners had to lose a lot of games to get Nick Bosa. Seattle hasn't even had to do that. We get to enjoy a competitive season and a chance to grab our Nick Bosa without even losing 13 games. So take that with not a grain of salt. That's not the right term, but take that for what it's worth, I guess. But yeah, I'm just kind of rambling. I apologize. I made this right after. My thoughts are all over the place right now. This team is just not ultra competitive right now. When they were 6-3, I thought there was a chance. I thought this was a team that maybe was good enough for a Super Bowl because the offense was humming and the defense was starting to come on. And that's just it's all kind of been a race. The defense is bad and the offense is fine. I'm not going to knock them too much against the Niners, who have shut everybody down. But even the offense, I think, is taken a little bit of a step back. And I will say, too, this game, regardless, isn't the game to get mad at. By the way, Seahawks fans, if you're watching this, the Panthers game was the game to be frustrated with. The Raiders game was a game to be frustrated with. The Saints, at the time, wasn't bothered by the Saints loss because I didn't think this team was going to be all that competitive. The Falcons game, those were the games to be mad at. Beat the Falcons and the Panthers, and you're 9-5, and I'd probably go, at this game. The Niners are really good. So, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to talk about with this. It sounded like Tyler Lockett left with an injury. If you listen to I'll kind of touch up a little bit on my video. I think I was right with what I said and where the Seahawks can win. So I'll stand by that video. I think that, and again, I didn't say they were going to come in there. It wasn't a trash talking we're beating the Niners today. It was just, listen, this is what Seattle can do. And I think for the most part, they kind of did that. If Diggs catches the pick and Homer doesn't fumble, I think my video, you might be going, wow, Jay was kind of spot on there with what he was saying, with what this team can do to win the game. They did play better run defense today. They did. They just don't have the talent to completely shut down a running game. I'm curious to see what Brock Purdy looks like when that running game isn't going. And like I said, it wasn't great tonight, but it was enough. And they played ahead the whole way. Like, and credit to the Niners, they got ahead. But like, to make a guy like Brock Purdy struggle, and I said this about when they played Wolford too, you've got to get ahead of these guys. Like, if you get up on the Niners 13-0, much easier said than done. But let's say they go down and get up 7-0 on that first drive. They were moving the football a little bit. It may change things because he kind of forced Purdy to maybe throw a little bit more and get out of his comfort zone. But I think Purdy played every possession minus 1 or 2 with a lead, and then the whole second half essentially with a 2-score lead. Even 8 points with 3 minutes to go is almost a 2-score lead, essentially, as well. So, that is what it is. I'm trying to think, again, if anything else. I think that's about all I've got for this game. I think just a lesson in talent wins at the end of the day. Like, we can sit here and say, oh, Clint Hurtt stinks. I don't think Clint Hurtt has the horses on the D-line. I think last year, the defense looked a little better under Ken Norton because Ken Norton had more horses. He had veterans like Carlos Dunlap and Benson Mayo. I'm not saying, Mayo was great, but like there were more veteran guys that could make things happen. Bobby Wagner even. But you shed some of those older guys to get the youth movement going and get the infusion of young talent. I mean, you can always go out and sign cheap veterans and be better. Like, there's cheap moves Seattle could make right now and probably improve the team. Like, you could make a case that, maybe a better nickel than Kobe Bryant, but you want Kobe Bryant to take lumps. You want Tariq Woolen out there, and Tariq Woolen's been fantastic. Like, Artie Burns might be better than Michael Jackson, but you're better off seeing what Michael Jackson can do for you. So, you know what I mean? Like, Hurt doesn't have the horses this year, I think. Just looking at just my opinion, they need to do some things better. I'm not saying the coaching's absolved, but like it wasn't about this year. And at the end of the day, the talent has got to shine through. The Niners have the talent, Seattle doesn't. So that's what it comes down to. I don't think it's anything to do with effort, heart, want. It just has to do, or even coaching. I really don't. I think Kyle Shanahan's a great coach and dialed up some good things. But I don't think any less of Seattle's coaching staff. I think they've got some of the right pieces there. And when you bring in Clint Hurtt, Sean Desai, like those guys, especially Desai, like it's not a one-year project, everybody. It's not. Like, this wasn't a 1-year get this fixed. Like, it's going to take some time for this defense to get there. So we'll see. Going to be a long week. Obviously, now we got until Christmas Eve. I don't know what I'll have some videos up. Seattle goes to Kansas City in 10 days. And I mean, you know what? Low expectations might make it a fun game. It wouldn't shock me against Kansas City's defense. Seattle moves the ball a little bit and stays somewhat competitive. It's kind of similar to what they did tonight a little bit in that vein. Maybe with just a little more points being scored on both sides. So that's that. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you. I'm over 200 subs. I was going to make a video about it. I probably still will. Truly, truly appreciate everybody that is subscribed. It means the world to me. It means a lot to me that even 200 people plus want to hear my voice and listen to what I have to say. So I apologize for the long ramble. I apologize for probably repeating myself and being all over the place. But please like, comment, subscribe. Truly appreciate it. Go Hawks. The future is bright. I promise it is. I truly mean that. The future for this team is very bright. It's unfortunate that it's a little bit of a collapse at the end of this year, but we are going to be very happy people in April. I can guarantee you that. So go Hawks, and I will see you guys later. Peace.